Maria's gaze drifted to the alleyway beside a laundromat, where a small figure sat hunched beside an overflowing trash bin. A boy. He couldn't have been older than 9 or 10. His hoodie was soaked through, the sleeves stretched and frayed. His shoes were so worn that his toes peeked out from the fabric. He sat with his knees tucked close to his chest, his head bowed, his small hands buried deep in his sleeves. Before we continue this story, please click on the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell for more amazing stories. The city never truly slept. It only changed rhythm, from the chaos of the day to the quiet ache of the night. Steam curled from subway grates, horns echoed in the distance, and the wet pavement shimmered beneath the yellow streetlights like molten glass. Maria Lewis walked quickly down East 45th Street, her worn boots splashing through shallow puddles. The November wind cut through her thin jacket, numbing her fingers despite her attempts to bury them in her pockets. She hugged a small paper bag to her chest, holding on to the faint warmth radiating from it. Inside was her dinner, a simple rice bowl from the corner shop near her apartment. White rice, stir-fried vegetables, a few strips of chicken. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Maria had once imagined New York differently. Back when she was 20 and full of hope, the city had seemed like a promise, bright, alive, overflowing with opportunity. She had come chasing dreams of design and art, imagining her work splashed across glossy magazines, her name printed in elegant font at the corner of pages. But dreams didn't always survive reality. After the layoffs at the design firm, bills had stacked up faster than freelance jobs appeared. Rent deadlines, rejection emails, and the sound of her phone buzzing with "We've decided to move forward with another candidate" had become her new routine. Now she lived day to day, temp jobs, secondhand clothes, and instant coffee. Hope was a luxury she could only afford in small doses. She reached the crosswalk and stopped, watching the signal flicker from white to red. Across the street, a bus hissed to a stop, the doors sighing open. Someone laughed nearby, their voice bright against the night air. But Maria's gaze drifted to the alleyway beside a laundromat, where a small figure sat hunched beside an overflowing trash bin. A boy. He couldn't have been older than 9 or 10. His hoodie was soaked through, the sleeves stretched and frayed. His shoes were so worn that his toes peeked out from the fabric. He sat with his knees tucked close to his chest, his head bowed, his small hands buried deep in his sleeves. Maria hesitated. In New York you learn not to stop. You kept your eyes forward, your heart guarded. The city was full of stories you weren't strong enough to carry. But something about him, maybe how small he looked against the backdrop of the endless city, made her pause. She stepped closer. "Hey," she said softly, crouching beside him. "You okay?" The boy flinched at the sound of her voice. When he looked up, she saw the faint shimmer of tears on his cheeks. His eyes were light brown, too big for his thin face. He looked at her with a mix of fear and exhaustion. "I'm fine," he muttered, voice barely audible. Maria frowned. "You don't look fine." He shrugged weakly, avoiding her gaze. "I just need to rest a bit." She noticed the tremble in his fingers, the way his stomach tightened beneath his hoodie. It wasn't just the cold, it was hunger. The kind that gnawed quietly until it silenced everything else. Maria glanced down at the paper bag in her hands. The smell of rice and soy sauce drifted up faintly, making her stomach twist. She hadn't eaten all day, and her body screamed for food, but the boy looked like he hadn't eaten in days. She hesitated only for a moment. "Here," she said, holding the bag toward him. He blinked, confused. "What's that?" "Dinner," she replied simply. "Take it. It's still warm." His eyes widened slightly. "No, I can't take your food." "Yes, you can," she said gently. "Please." He shook his head again as if afraid. "You don't even know me." Maria smiled faintly. "That's okay. You look like you could use it more than I can." The boy stared at the bag for a long moment. Then slowly, his hands emerged from his sleeves, small, trembling, and pale. He reached out, hesitated, then took the bag. "Thank you," he murmured, clutching it close as if it might vanish. Maria rose to her feet. "Eat while it's still hot." He nodded, lowering his head again. The sound of paper rustling followed, the boy opening the box carefully, reverently. A faint hum escaped his lips as he took his first bite. It was soft, grateful, the kind of sound that pierced through the noise of the city and stayed with you. Maria turned to leave. She walked back toward the sidewalk, her stomach empty but her chest strangely warm. Halfway across the street, she heard him call out, "Miss." She turned. The boy stood now, clutching the empty paper bag. His eyes shone beneath the flickering streetlight. "I'll pay you back one day," he said earnestly. Maria smiled, the kind of tired but sincere smile that came from someone who didn't expect anything in return. "You don't have to. Just stay warm, okay?" He nodded, and for the briefest moment, his lips curved into a smile, the first she'd seen. Then he sank back into the shadows, and Maria continued her walk home. When she reached her apartment, a small studio on the 4th floor of a creaky old building, she sat on the edge of her bed and exhaled. The city hummed outside her window. Somewhere far below, a siren wailed. She thought of the boy, his eyes, the way he held the rice bowl like it was the most precious thing in the world. A single act of kindness, she told herself. Just one night, one meal. It wouldn't change anything. But she was wrong. That single bowl of rice was about to change everything for both of them. The following morning, the city was gray and restless. Clouds hung low over Manhattan, pressing down like a weight, and rain drizzled steadily against the windows of Maria's tiny studio. The walls smelled faintly of damp paint, and the radiator made soft clanking noises as if complaining about the cold. Maria sat at the edge of her bed, tying her shoes, preparing for another long day. The apartment was barely furnished. A second-hand dresser, a chip table, a small easel pushed against the wall where sketches gathered dust. Once upon a time she'd filled entire sketchbooks with designs. Bright colors, dreamlike patterns, clothes that told stories. Now the pages were blank. Survival had replaced inspiration. She grabbed her coat and slung her worn tote over her shoulder. Another day meant another shift at the cafe, 6 hours of steaming lattes, smiling through exhaustion, pretending everything was fine. But as she stepped outside into the drizzle, her thoughts drifted back to last night, to the boy. She couldn't get his face out of her head. The way he'd clutched the rice bowl, the way his voice trembled when he said, "I'll pay you back one day." There had been something raw, something too old for a child in his eyes. By midday, the cafe buzzed with regulars. Maria moved from table to table, her apron spotted with coffee stains, her smile practiced. The owner, Mr. Park, a stout Korean man with a soft heart, noticed her distant stare. "You okay, Maria?" he asked, wiping down the counter. She blinked, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just tired." "Too tired to eat again?" He pointed toward the small tray near the espresso machine where he'd left a bowl of steamed rice and kimchi. "You always forget to take your break." Maria hesitated, then picked up the bowl. The steam rose gently, carrying with it the faint sweetness of sesame oil. It reminded her of last night, the smell of the meal she'd given away. "Thank you, Mr. Park," she murmured. He nodded. "You help everyone else. Someone has to help you too." Maria smiled faintly and took her lunch to the small table near the window. Outside, people hurried past under umbrellas, faces hidden behind scarves and screens. The city moved fast, indifferent. But her gaze lingered on every passerby, half hoping to see that boy again. She didn't. Not that day. Or the next. Or the next week after that. Still she kept looking. Winter thickened, settling over New York like a frozen blanket. The streets glittered with frost, and the river smoked faintly under the morning sun. Maria worked double shifts through December to cover her rent. The days blurred together, work, subway, home, sleep. But every evening, when she passed that same alley near the laundromat, her steps slowed. Sometimes she left food there. A roll, a thermos of soup, or a small bowl of rice wrapped in foil. Most mornings it was gone. She didn't know if it was him taking it or someone else in need. But the thought that it might be him, that the boy she'd helped was still out there, made her keep leaving food. It became her quiet ritual, her way of fighting the city's coldness. Then one evening just before Christmas, Maria walked home through a flurry of snow. She carried her groceries close, her breath forming clouds in the air. The sidewalks sparkled under streetlights. The city, for all its harshness, looked almost gentle for once. When she reached the alley, she froze. There he was. The same boy, older only by a few weeks, still wearing that thin hoodie. But this time he wasn't alone. A small stray cat curled in his lap, purring softly. The boy's face lit up when he saw her. "You came back," he said, smiling. Maria felt relief flood her chest. "I wasn't sure I'd see you again. I've been staying near the shelter on 9th, he said quickly, as if afraid she'd scold him. "But they don't always have space. I come here sometimes, it's quieter." She crouched beside him, noticing the bruises on his knees, the dirt under his nails. "Do you have anyone? Family?" He looked away. "My mom used to work in a diner, but she got sick. After that, I don't know." His voice trailed off into the cold. Maria swallowed the lump in her throat. She didn't ask more. Some stories were too heavy for cold nights. "Wait here," she said, standing abruptly. He blinked, confused. "Where are you going?" She smiled softly. "To get something warm." 10 minutes later, she returned from the corner store with 2 steaming rice bowls and a pair of disposable spoons. They sat together on the cold curb, steam rising between them, the smell of soy and ginger filling the air. He ate quickly at first, then slower, savoring each bite. "This is the best thing I've had all week," he said through a shy grin. Maria laughed softly. "I'll tell Mr. Lee at the store. He makes the best rice in Manhattan." The boy looked up at her suddenly. "Why are you nice to me?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Because someone once was kind to me when I didn't think I deserved it. Maybe I just wanted to pass that on." He nodded thoughtfully, then smiled. "My name's Eli," he said quietly. "Eli Carter." "Maria," she replied, extending her hand. "Maria Lewis." His hand was small and cold, but his shake was firm, as if he wanted to prove something. That night, when they finished eating, Maria walked him to the shelter on 9th. The staff there recognized him, surprised to see him with someone. As he turned to go inside, he looked back at her and said softly, "I'll see you again." She nodded. "You better." Maria went home smiling that night, her breath fogging the cold air. She didn't know why, but for the first time in months the city didn't feel so lonely. She sat by her window long after midnight, sketching for the first time in ages. Lines turned into shapes, and shapes into something warm, familiar. A woman kneeling, offering a small bowl of rice to a child in the rain. She stared at the drawing for a long time, then smiled faintly. Some dreams didn't die. They just changed shape. What Maria didn't know was that her act of kindness had planted a seed, one that would grow quietly through the years until the night she'd need it most. Winter had settled fully over Manhattan, thick and unrelenting. Snowflakes danced in the streetlights, blanketing sidewalks and rooftops, transforming the city into something softer, almost magical. But magic, Maria knew, was fragile. Life rarely waited for wishes. It demanded endurance. Maria's apartment felt colder than usual. The radiator clanged and hissed, and her heater seemed to do little more than push around the damp chill. She unpacked the groceries she had managed to save for her own dinner. More rice, frozen vegetables, a small can of chicken. Her tiny kitchen smelled faintly of soy and garlic. It wasn't much, but she had learned to be grateful for small things. For the past week, Maria had been making nightly visits to the alley where Eli had first appeared. She didn't expect anything in return. She had long abandoned the fantasy that kindness would be repaid immediately. Yet the boy had become a presence in her life, a quiet reminder that she was not alone in this vast, overwhelming city. Tonight, she walked to the alley with 2 bowls of steaming rice, carefully packed in disposable containers. The snow had made the streets slippery, and her boots slipped once, sending a shiver up her spine. But she pressed on, thinking only of the small smile that awaited her. When she reached the spot, he was there, crouched under a thin wool blanket, eyes wide when he saw her approach. "You brought it," he said softly, holding out his hands. Maria handed him a bowl and took a seat on the curb beside him. The steam from the food mixed with the cold night air, wrapping around them in a fragile, warm bubble. Eli ate quickly at first, then slowed, savoring the flavors like they were treasures. How do you always know I'm here?" he asked, his voice hesitant. Maria shrugged. "I just pay attention. Most people don't. They're too busy looking at their phones or their shoes." He looked down at his rice, then back at her, his eyes bright in the dim light. "I don't think anyone's ever done this for me before. Just brought me food without asking anything in return." Maria felt a familiar pang in her chest. It's because someone once did that for me, and it made me feel human again. Eli smiled faintly, then looked away, shoving his hands into his hoodie pockets. I can't stay here forever, he admitted. I'm supposed to be in a foster home, but sometimes I just run away. It's easier. Maria's heart tightened. It's okay, she said softly. You don't have to explain anything to me. I'm glad you're safe right now. He nodded, swallowing the last bite of rice. I wish I could stay here longer, but it gets cold and I get scared sometimes. Maria reached over, brushing a snowflake from his hair. That's why I come. I'll keep bringing you something warm, as long as I can. For a moment, the city's noise seemed to vanish. The distant hum of traffic, the wail of sirens, the echo of boots on wet pavement, all faded behind the small cocoon they'd created. A woman and a child, sharing rice in the middle of New York City, finding warmth where most found only cold. The next day, Maria's life returned to its relentless rhythm. She worked her cafe shift, delivered packages for a temp job, and navigated the crowded subway. Yet she couldn't shake Eli from her mind. She thought about him constantly, whether he had eaten breakfast, whether he had stayed warm, whether someone else had noticed him besides her. Her boss, Mr. Park, noticed the distraction. You're miles away today, he said, wiping down the counter. Maria forced a smile. Just tired, that's all. He nodded, suspicion lingering in his eyes. Make sure you eat something before your next shift. Don't get lost in work alone. I will, she said. But she knew she wouldn't. Her attention had shifted elsewhere, to a boy who had reminded her of the humanity in the city, who had reminded her that even in a place full of strangers, connection was possible. That night, Maria returned to the alley. The snow had fallen thick, burying litter bins and footprints alike. She called out softly, Eli. A small voice answered from the shadows. I'm here. He stepped forward, shaking off snow, and hugged the bowl of rice she handed him. Thank you, he whispered. Every night. Maria knelt beside him, shivering but steady. You're welcome. I want to make sure you have at least one warm meal a day. He smiled shyly, then spoke softly, almost to himself. I don't even know your name. Maria, she replied, holding out her hand. Maria Lewis. He shook it, small and firm. Eli Carter. Good to meet you, she said. For the next few weeks, their routine settled into a rhythm. Maria would deliver food every evening. Eli would share what little he had to tell, bits of his life, stories of streets and shelters, of moments too small for anyone to notice. And Maria in turn shared her own stories of art, of a childhood far from the city, of dreams deferred but not forgotten. The connection grew quietly, a fragile bond forged from shared warmth and vulnerability. They were two people navigating the chaos of New York City, finding solace in the simplest act, a meal. Then the twist came. One evening, as Maria returned from her cafe shift, she noticed a group of men standing outside her apartment building. The kind of men who carried themselves with authority, dressed in expensive coats despite the snow. Security detail, perhaps. Her stomach knotted. Before she could reach her door, a woman's voice called out, Maria Lewis? She turned. A well-dressed woman with sharp eyes and a clipboard stepped forward. You've been leaving food for Eli Carter, correct? Maria froze. Yes, why? The woman sighed. He's not just any child. Eli Carter is the grandson of Samuel Carter, a prominent business family. His disappearance from the foster system has been a concern for months. You found him. Maria's mouth went dry. I just wanted to make sure he ate. The woman studied her carefully, then nodded. Your kindness, it's remarkable. But this is serious. Mr. Carter will want to meet you. Maria's mind spun. The boy she'd been feeding? He wasn't just a child lost in the city. He was part of a powerful family. And she had kept him safe. Not with lawyers or money or influence, just a simple act of giving. As she walked up the stairs to her apartment, her hands trembling, she realized something. This moment, this ordinary act of feeding a child rice, was about to change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The lobby of the Carter residence was impossibly grand. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and polished brass accents reflected the warm glow of the lights. Maria hesitated at the edge of the threshold, clutching her tote tightly. The smells of polished wood and subtle perfume mixed in a way that reminded her of a museum. She wasn't sure she belonged. A young man in a tailored suit approached her. "Maria Lewis?" His voice was calm but carried authority. "Yes," Maria said softly, her voice smaller than usual. He gave a polite nod. "I'm Michael Carter, Eli's uncle. Please follow me." The elevator carried her up 20 floors, each chime echoing like a drumbeat in her chest. She had never been in a building this high. Windows stretched from floor to ceiling, revealing the city lights twinkling below like a sea of stars. When the doors opened, she stepped into a room that felt almost unreal. Rich tapestries adorned the walls, and the furniture was arranged perfectly, as if the room itself had been staged for photographs. But the grandeur didn't intimidate her. Maria had learned long ago that comfort didn't always come with wealth. A man stood near a massive window, his silhouette framed by the city lights. When he turned, Maria caught her first glimpse of him, tall, distinguished, his hair streaked with silver, eyes sharp yet gentle. Samuel Carter, Eli's grandfather. "Maria," he said, voice steady but warm, "I've been hearing remarkable things about you." Maria bowed her head slightly. I didn't do anything remarkable. I just fed Eli." Samuel's expression softened. "That's exactly it. You saw him when the world didn't. You acted when others hesitated. That takes courage, more than many grown adults possess." Maria swallowed, unsure what to say. The room suddenly felt too bright, too large, yet the words warmed her like sunlight. Before she could respond, the sound of running feet echoed down the hall. Eli appeared, clutching Mr. Floppy tightly, his hoodie falling slightly over his eyes. He froze when he saw her, then ran forward and embraced her. "I missed you," he whispered, burying his face in her coat. Maria hugged him back, feeling the weight of weeks of worry and fear lift in an instant. "I missed you too," she murmured. Samuel watched silently, his hands clasped behind his back. "Maria," he said finally, "we owe you more than words can express. If it weren't for you, Eli, well, we may have lost him in ways we can't begin to imagine." Maria shook her head. I didn't do it for anything like that. I just wanted to help." Samuel nodded slowly, as if weighing her words. "And yet here you are. Your actions have changed everything." Eli let go of her for a moment and smiled shyly. "Grandpa, she's the one who helped me," he said. "Not anyone else. She stayed with me." Maria felt her cheeks flush. She looked down, unsure where to place her hands. It was one thing to feed a child in an alley. It was another to be praised by a family whose power and wealth seemed infinite. Samuel approached her and extended his hand. "Maria Lewis, if you'll allow us, we'd like you to come into our lives in a bigger way." Maria blinked. I don't know what you mean." Michael stepped forward. "We want you to help Eli adjust. Stay with him, guide him, be the presence that you've already proven to be. You've shown a bond that money can't buy. That's invaluable." Maria's mind raced. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected anything beyond making sure Eli had a warm meal. Now she was being asked to step into a world she'd never known, one of privilege, influence, and scrutiny. And yet, something in her stirred. For months she had felt invisible, her life a series of routines that faded into gray. And now the very act that had seemed so ordinary, giving food to a child, was opening a door to something extraordinary. She looked at Eli, who smiled at her with that quiet, trusting gaze. In that moment she knew her answer. "I'll do it," she said softly. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Maria moved into a small apartment on the Carter estate, modest compared to the mansion's grandeur, but far more than she had ever imagined. Eli was thrilled, though cautious, keeping Mr. Floppy close and glancing at her constantly for reassurance. Maria's presence was a gentle anchor for him. He didn't speak much at first, wary of the expectations and attention that came with the Carter name. But she didn't push. She shared small routines, making rice together, reading at the window, exploring the courtyard. Slowly he began to open up. One evening as they ate their dinner, a simple rice bowl with vegetables and chicken, Eli spoke softly. "Maria, do you think people like me can really belong somewhere?" Maria looked at him, choosing her words carefully. Yes, Eli. You belong wherever someone sees you. Not for what you have, but for who you are. He nodded, staring at the steam rising from his bowl. I think I finally understand what you mean when you said staying matters more than giving. She smiled faintly. Exactly. It's not enough to just give someone something and walk away. Staying, being there. That's what really changes things. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. They laughed together, shared stories, and slowly, Eli's laughter filled spaces that had been silent for too long. Yet, Maria couldn't ignore the undercurrent of scrutiny. The Carter name carried expectations, and the city's media had begun to notice Eli's sudden reappearance. Rumors circulated. Why had a young woman been feeding him? What role did she play? Was there a scandal brewing? Maria tried to focus on Eli, but the pressure seeped into the walls of their apartment. Letters, messages, and phone calls came from lawyers, distant relatives, and curious reporters. She had stepped into a world where her simple acts of kindness were now under the lens of wealth and influence. And then came the first challenge. One morning, Eli's father, whom she had never met, arrived unannounced. Tall, imposing, and sharp-eyed, he looked at Maria and then at Eli. So this is the girl? He asked, voice cold. Maria felt her stomach tighten. I'm Maria. I've just been helping Eli, making sure he has food and someone to talk to. The man's gaze hardened. You've been feeding my son? How long? Maria swallowed. A few weeks. He was hungry, and no one else noticed. The man's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. You just did it? No permission. No notification. I didn't think anyone would, she said softly. And I didn't want him to go hungry while we figured out what to do next. Eli looked between them, fear creeping into his eyes. Maria reached out, placing her hand on his shoulder. The man's face softened ever so slightly. He crouched down to Eli's level. I didn't know, he murmured. I thought you were fine. Eli looked at Maria, and for the first time, a smile broke through his hesitancy. She helped me, he said simply. The father looked at Maria again, and something in his expression shifted, from suspicion to a grudging respect. I see that now, he said quietly. Thank you. Truly. Maria nodded, unsure how to respond. She hadn't done it for thanks. She had done it because it was necessary, and in that moment, she realized something important. No matter the scrutiny, no matter the wealth or power surrounding Eli, her role wasn't about recognition. It was about being present, staying. The city outside gleamed through the Carter estate's massive windows, a labyrinth of light stretching endlessly into the night. Maria stood at the edge of the balcony, staring at the skyline, feeling both awe and unease. New York had always felt immense, but now, living in this world of wealth and scrutiny, it felt suffocating. She could hear Eli laughing faintly behind her, chasing Mr. Floppy across the polished floors of their apartment. The sound was sweet, fragile, a reminder that the boy she had once found in an alley still existed beyond the marble halls and the careful eyes of the Carter family. But the tension she had sensed since his father's arrival lingered like a storm cloud. Maria had expected challenges, the media, the family scrutiny, the sudden spotlight, but nothing had prepared her for the subtle ways influence could distort reality. Small whispers began filtering through the estate staff. Rumors that Maria was overstepping her role, that she had too much sway over Eli. Some of the staff, perhaps threatened by her influence, looked at her with thinly veiled suspicion. The first confrontation came unexpectedly. Maria Lewis? A sharp voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see one of the estate managers, a woman named Vanessa, standing in the hallway. Her expression was unreadable. Yes, Maria replied cautiously. Vanessa's eyes flicked toward the living area, then back. There's a situation you need to be aware of. Some members of the Carter board are concerned about Eli's attachments. They feel your presence is influencing decisions regarding his care. Maria's chest tightened. Influencing. Vanessa nodded, expression professional but cold. They worry that a child's bond with an outsider, no matter how well-intentioned, could create complications. They want you to maintain distance. Maria felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Distance? But he needs stability. He trusts me. Vanessa's gaze didn't waver. I understand your intentions, but you must respect their concerns. I'm only relaying instructions. Maria turned away, her hands clenching the balcony railing. The city's glow seemed distant now, irrelevant. She had never expected that her simple act of feeding a child would become a political chess piece. And yet there was no time to despair. Eli was in the other room, counting on her presence. Later that evening, Maria knelt beside him as he carefully arranged blocks on the floor. You've built an empire, she said lightly, trying to mask her worry. Eli looked up, smiling faintly. It's the best empire I've ever had. You should see the towers I built last night. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. I love that you're using your imagination. That's important. And, no matter what anyone says, I'm still here, okay? His smile faltered slightly, uncertainty creeping in. But what if they make you leave? Maria's heart ached. She had known this possibility existed, but hearing it from him made it real. Then we'll find a way to stay connected. I promise. Eli nodded, trusting her words even as doubt lingered in his eyes. The next morning, the estate was buzzing with activity. Legal advisors, public relations teams, and social workers converged in a way that felt overwhelming even to Maria, who had grown used to the controlled chaos of her own life in the city. Samuel Carter, observing the flurry, pulled her aside. Maria, I know this is difficult, but Eli needs consistency. He needs you. Don't let anyone intimidate you. Maria swallowed hard. I don't want to upset anyone. I just want to be there for him. Samuel placed a firm hand on her shoulder. You won't upset me, and I won't let anyone take that away from you. But you must be prepared. Influence and power are messy. They don't always align with what's right. Maria nodded, absorbing his words. She had long known the city could be cruel, but this, navigating human politics in the Carter estate, felt like an entirely new battleground. That afternoon, Maria received an unexpected visitor. A woman named Lila, Eli's aunt, with a sharp voice and a gaze that seemed to pierce through her. Maria Lewis, Lila began, her tone clipped. I've heard you've been playing an unusually influential role in Eli's life. Maria braced herself. I've only been helping him, making sure he has food and someone to talk to. Lila's lips tightened. Helping? Or guiding? I've seen you making decisions, influencing his routines, his preferences. The board is concerned that you may be overstepping. Maria met her gaze, feeling a flicker of defiance. Eli trusts me. He needs consistency, and he needs someone who stays, not someone who leaves when things get inconvenient. Lila studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her sincerity. Then with a faint nod she said, You may be the only person who has that effect on him. But tread carefully. Actions, even with the best intentions, can have consequences in a household like this. Maria exhaled, tension leaving her in slow waves. I understand. Eli peeked around the corner, eyes wide. Are you okay? Maria crouched to his level, taking his hands. I'm okay. And I'm not going anywhere. He smiled faintly, and in that small gesture, Maria found renewed determination. Days passed and the scrutiny intensified. Journalists began circling, drawn to the mysterious story of the girl who had saved Eli Carter. Headlines implied everything from scandal to conspiracy, twisting a simple act of kindness into intrigue. Maria ignored them. She focused on Eli, guiding him through homework, reading bedtime stories, and quietly helping him rebuild confidence. She taught him how to navigate his fears without becoming overwhelmed, how to trust adults while still keeping a voice of his own. Yet, as much as Maria tried to shield him, the world intruded. One evening as they walked through the estate's garden, flashing cameras lit up the night like fireworks. Eli froze, fear creeping into his posture. Maria knelt beside him. Look at me, she said firmly. You're safe. We'll get through this together. You're stronger than you know. He nodded, clinging to her hand, and for the first time, she realized that staying wasn't just about providing meals or comfort. It was about presence, courage, and guidance in the face of storms. But the story was far from over. An anonymous letter arrived at the estate the following morning, delivered with care. It contained a single message. Not everyone who smiles is friend. Watch closely, or your kindness may be stolen. Maria felt a chill. Whoever had sent it knew of her involvement. Was it a threat? A warning? Or something more sinister? Samuel Carter appeared beside her as she held the note. We'll find out. But remember this, your instincts have been right so far. Trust them. And trust yourself. Maria looked down at the letter, then out at the city skyline. The streets were alive below. Unaware of the storm brewing inside this world of wealth and expectation, she realized then that being present for Eli, protecting his trust, was no longer just an act of kindness. It was a challenge, a test, and she was ready. The bell of resolve had rung. Maria understood. This story, which had begun with a simple rice meal, was now evolving into something much larger. A battle of influence, trust, and the power of steadfast presence. Eli looked up at her, eyes shining with quiet hope. We'll be okay, right? Maria smiled, brushing snow from his hair as if shielding him from the world. We'll be okay. Together. And together they would face whatever came next. The sun had barely risen when Maria awoke to a soft knock at her door. The note from the night before still lay on the desk, untouched, as if daring her to act. She rubbed her eyes and opened the door to find Michael Carter standing there, his expression tense. Maria, he said quietly, we need to talk. Now. She followed him through the winding hallways of the Carter estate, the opulence around her blurring into insignificance against the weight of anticipation pressing on her chest. They entered a quiet study, lined with books that seemed older than the city itself. Michael closed the door behind them, and the faint click echoed like a judge's gavel. We've received information, he began, lowering his voice, that someone may be targeting Eli. Someone inside the board doesn't want him to recover fully. They see him as leverage, as a way to gain control of the family's wealth. Maria froze. What do you mean? Who? Michael shook his head. We don't know yet. But whoever it is, they're patient, careful, and dangerous. That note you received. It's just the beginning. Maria swallowed hard, her mind spinning. She had faced challenges before, but this was a new level. And Eli, trusting and fragile, was at the center. Later that day, as Maria prepared a simple rice meal for Eli, she could feel the unease settling over the mansion like fog. The kitchen smelled of simmering vegetables and seasoned chicken, but she barely noticed. Her mind was on protection strategy and how to keep the boys safe. Eli sat at the counter, quietly peeling a carrot. Maria, he said softly, do you think people really want to hurt me? Maria stopped, turning to face him. Some people make choices that aren't kind, Eli. But we won't let that stop us. We stay together, we watch out for each other. That's how we win. He nodded, hugging Mr. Floppy tightly. I want to stay brave, he whispered. You already are, Maria said, brushing a strand of hair from his eyes. Being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you keep going, even when you are. He smiled faintly, and for a brief moment the tension lifted. That afternoon, Maria was summoned to a meeting with Samuel Carter and the Board of Trustees. The room was stark, formal, and intimidating. The members, men and women in impeccable suits, watched her closely, their eyes sharp and calculating. Maria Lewis, one of them began, while your intentions are admirable, your influence over Eli has raised concerns. We need assurance that your role will not interfere with his upbringing or the Carter family decisions. Maria's hands clenched at her sides. She had anticipated resistance, but the cold, clinical tone of their words made her stomach churn. I'm here because Eli needs someone who stays. That's it. Not to make decisions for him, not to manipulate, not to play a role I don't belong in. I'm here to help him feel safe. A few board members exchanged looks. The man who had spoken leaned back, scrutinizing her. And if your presence places him in danger? Maria met his gaze steadily. Then I'll face that danger with him. That's the point of staying. Not leaving when it's difficult. There was silence. Then, Samuel Carter spoke. These board members may not understand, but I do. Maria Lewis has been the constant Eli needed. Nothing else matters more. His words carried weight, and for a fleeting moment, Maria felt the walls of scrutiny crumble. Yet she knew the threat wasn't gone. Someone had already marked them, and someone would act. That evening a storm rolled over New York, heavy rain lashing against the estate windows. Maria sat with Eli in the library, watching the city lights blur through the downpour. Thunder rumbled faintly and Eli shivered. "Maria," he said, "what if they take me away? Again?" She shook her head, wrapping a blanket around him. "No one will take you away, Eli. Not while I'm here. We're going to face this storm together, just like we did before." He held her hand tightly, and she could feel his pulse against hers, small, nervous, yet persistent. It reminded her why she stayed, why she could never walk away. Suddenly a crash of thunder echoed, and the lights flickered. The phone rang in the study. Maria exchanged a glance with Eli. Michael answered, his voice tight. "It's Lila." Maria's stomach dropped. "What does she want?" Michael lowered his voice. "She's concerned, or so she says. But it seems too convenient. She's been asking questions about Eli's routines, who visits, who knows what. I don't trust her." Maria's hands tightened on her lap. "Then we need to be careful." Michael nodded. "And we will. But you have to be prepared. Whoever is watching, they're learning, testing, and waiting for a mistake." That night Maria lay awake, replaying every moment, every interaction. The thought of danger lurking in the shadows made her heart pound. But she also thought of Eli, sleeping peacefully in the next room, and Mr. Floppy tucked safely in his arms. She realized something profound. Staying wasn't just about being kind. Staying meant vigilance, courage, and unwavering commitment. It meant facing fear head-on and refusing to abandon someone who depended on you. The next morning Maria rose with determination. The storm had passed, leaving the city washed clean. She prepared breakfast, a simple rice meal with egg and vegetables, and carried it to Eli, who had already begun setting up his toy soldiers along the dining table. "You're up early," she said with a soft smile. "I wanted to be ready," he replied, "for whatever comes next." Maria nodded, impressed by his bravery. "Good. Because whatever comes, we face it together. And we don't back down." He smiled faintly, and in that moment Maria felt a flicker of hope. Despite threats, scrutiny, and shadows of danger, their bond remained unbroken. But she also knew the storm wasn't over. The twist in their story, hidden agendas, unseen threats, and secrets waiting to surface, was only beginning to unfold. And Maria was ready. She had to be. Because staying meant more than kindness now. Staying meant protection. Staying meant fighting for the trust and safety of the boy who had once been invisible. As the city outside awakened, the first rays of sunlight cutting through the glass towers, Maria looked at Eli and whispered, "We'll make it. Together." Eli hugged her hand, holding it like a lifeline, and for a moment the mansion, the threats, the scrutiny all melted away. Only one truth remained. They had each other, and that was enough to face whatever came next. The stage was set. The shadows were gathering, secrets would be revealed, and Maria and Eli's bond would be tested like never before. But the story of staying, of courage, vigilance, and love, had only just begun. The morning fog clung to the streets of New York like a shroud, muting the city's usual roar. Maria navigated the estate's long corridors with measured steps, her mind replaying the warning from the mysterious letter, and the mounting suspicion surrounding Eli's safety. Every portrait on the walls, every polished surface seemed to watch her as she passed. The grandeur of the Carter estate, once awe-inspiring, now felt like a gilded cage. Eli sat at the breakfast table, quietly sketching scenes from their previous adventures in Central Park. His pencil moved with precision, a distraction against the anxieties pressing on both of them. Maria prepared a rice porridge with chopped vegetables, the aroma filling the kitchen, hoping the familiar comfort of a simple meal might anchor them both. "You've been quiet," she observed softly as she set the bowl in front of him. Eli didn't look up. "I keep thinking, what if someone comes for me again? What if I can't trust anyone?" Maria knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Eli, you've trusted me before, and we've faced challenges together. We'll do it again. But we also need to be smart, and that means staying alert. Staying strong. Staying together." He nodded, swallowing a bite of rice, and Maria sensed his fragile courage rising with each chew. Later, as the estate buzzed with staff and advisors, Maria was summoned to the study. The heavy doors closed behind her with a resonant thud, the kind that echoed like a warning. Samuel Carter waited, his hands folded in front of him, brows furrowed. "Maria," he began, voice low. There's been a development. Lila has been caught accessing restricted files, documents relating to Eli's care and the estate's operations. It seems she's been gathering information for weeks. Maria's stomach twisted. Why? What is she planning? Samuel shook his head. We don't know yet. But the implications are serious. We need to be cautious. Every decision, every move must be calculated. And most importantly, Eli's safety is the priority. Maria's mind raced. Lila's warning from the night before now took on a darker meaning. This wasn't just board politics. It was potentially a deliberate attempt to control Eli. She clenched her fists, feeling both fear and determination rise within her. The revelation spread quickly through the estate staff. Whispers followed Maria down every corridor, cautious glances exchanged behind closed doors. Some offered quiet support. Others lingered with suspicion, unsure where her loyalty lay. She understood. In a world where power could corrupt even family, trust was fragile. That evening, Maria sat with Eli in the library, spreading out papers and sketches they had worked on together. The boy's concentration was fierce, a temporary shield against the chaos outside. You're brave, she said quietly, brushing hair from his forehead. Even when things get scary, you face them. Eli looked up, eyes wide. But what if I can't? You can, Maria replied firmly. Because you're not alone. And because staying present, staying courageous, gives us strength we can't even measure. He hugged Mr. Floppy tightly, seeking comfort, and Maria felt a renewed determination. Threats and secrets would come, but she would remain steadfast. The next day brought an unexpected visitor. A private investigator named Daniel, hired discreetly by Samuel Carter. His presence was unsettling, not because he was unwelcome, but because it reminded Maria that the battle for Eli's safety was intensifying. Maria Lewis? He asked, extending a hand. I've been assigned to assess potential threats. Your insights will be crucial. She studied him carefully. What kind of threats? Daniel's eyes were sharp, scanning her reaction. Everything from internal breaches like the one with Lila, to external pressures, opportunists who see Eli's vulnerability as leverage. We need to understand who's watching and why. Maria nodded, understanding the gravity. I'll tell you everything I've seen, every unusual interaction, every suspicious moment. I want Eli to be safe. Daniel's expression softened slightly. Good. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Later that evening, Maria returned to Eli's room, finding him quietly staring out the window at the city lights. He clutched Mr. Floppy in one hand, a sketchpad in the other. You seem worried, Maria said softly, sitting beside him. I am, he admitted. I keep thinking, what if staying isn't enough? What if it's not enough to protect me? Maria took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Staying isn't always about immediate results. It's about presence, persistence, and courage. Some things we can't control. But standing by someone, supporting them, that matters more than anything. Eli hugged her hand. Then we'll stay together. Maria smiled, feeling a mix of relief and resolve. They had each other, and that was their anchor. The following night, Maria discovered an encrypted email on one of the estate's computers. The sender was anonymous, but the contents were unmistakable. Detailed plans outlining potential moves against Eli, timed to coincide with moments of vulnerability. The writing was meticulous, cold, and calculated. Her pulse quickened. Whoever had sent this was not just observing, they were orchestrating. And the realization hit her. Staying meant not just kindness or vigilance, but strategy, foresight, and courage beyond what she had imagined. She immediately contacted Daniel, who arrived within the hour. Together they pored over the documents, cross-referencing names, schedules, and locations. Every clue, every subtle detail pointed to one thing. Someone within Eli's world was trying to exploit him. Maria's stomach tightened, but her resolve hardened. We can't let them succeed, she said firmly. We stay no matter what. Daniel nodded, impressed by her clarity. I've seen adults crumble in situations like this. You're remarkable, Maria. The boy is lucky to have you. Maria swallowed hard, thinking of Eli upstairs. He's not lucky, she corrected. We choose to stay. That's what makes the difference. As dawn broke over the city, Maria stood by the window, watching the streets slowly awaken. The storm of secrets, betrayals, and threats loomed large, but she felt a quiet strength within her. Eli's trust, his fragile courage, and the small rituals of their everyday life, shared meals, laughter, whispered stories, had built a foundation stronger than any conspiracy. And she knew with certainty that staying true, unwavering staying would see them through. The twist in their story, the shadow of danger, had arrived. But Maria would not waver. She would remain present, vigilant, and fearless. Because staying wasn't just an act of kindness anymore. It was an act of survival, an act of courage, an act of love. The mansion was unusually quiet that night, the kind of stillness that hinted at danger lurking in the shadows. Maria moved through the corridors with deliberate steps, her mind alert to every creak and whisper. Eli slept in his room, unaware that the storm of secrets had reached the walls around him. Maria's phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. "They're moving tonight. Stay sharp. Don't confront alone." Her pulse quickened. Someone had been planning this carefully, and the attack on Eli was imminent. She glanced at the heavy front doors, the security cameras blinking silently, and the luxury that surrounded them suddenly felt fragile, like a glass sculpture waiting to shatter. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the mantra she had clung to since the beginning. Staying was not passive. It was active, vigilant, protective. At exactly midnight, a faint sound of footsteps echoed outside Eli's room. Maria's heart jumped. She grabbed a flashlight and quietly approached the door, placing her hand on the knob. The footsteps paused, then resumed, deliberate and slow. "Eli," she whispered softly, nudging him awake. "We might have visitors. Stay calm and quiet." He blinked, clutching Mr. Floppy, but obeyed immediately, his eyes wide yet trusting. Maria guided him to the closet, instructing him to stay low and silent. Through the crack of the slightly open door, she saw shadows moving, two figures masked and gloved, gliding through the hallway with unnerving precision. They had bypassed the alarms and cameras, proving the extent of their preparation. Maria's mind raced. They couldn't risk confronting them directly. She needed a plan. Slowly, she backed toward the hallway exit, her flashlight off to avoid detection. Every heartbeat felt amplified, echoing in her chest. Meanwhile, in the main hall, the intruders advanced. One of them, taller, paused and spoke softly into a concealed earpiece. "She's here. The girl is with the boy." Maria froze. They knew she was present. Every instinct screamed at her to protect Eli. But she also knew that rushing in could be fatal. She needed strategy, patience, the kind that only came from staying in the moment rather than panicking. She crept to the staircase, careful to remain in the shadows. The hallway lights flickered as the storm outside pounded against the windows, masking the faint sound of her footsteps. Her phone vibrated again. "Daniel. Go to the rooftop. You can signal from there." Raising her eyes to the upper staircase, Maria nodded silently to herself. It was a risk, but one worth taking. Eli's safety depended on her composure. The rooftop was slick from the evening rain, the city lights blurred by mist and drizzle. Maria held Eli tightly, keeping his body low. "Stay with me," she whispered. "We'll be okay. I promise." He nodded, shivering, but the trust in his eyes steeled her resolve. Maria found the emergency signal light Daniel had installed, flicking it on in quick bursts. The reflection off the wet surfaces carried across the estate, and soon, a soft but deliberate response flashed back from the tower across the street. Daniel's team was on the move. Backup was coming. Inside the mansion, the intruders realized they were being observed. Panic subtly crept into their movements. One of them grabbed a small device from their coat, tapping it repeatedly. Maria's heart raced. She didn't know if it was a trigger, an alarm, or a communication tool. Every second counted. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway below. One intruder had slipped on the polished floor, crashing into a decorative vase. The sound shattered the tension, giving Maria the precious seconds she needed to retreat further up the staircase. Eli clung to her, eyes wide, whispering, "Are they gone?" "Not yet," Maria whispered back. "But help is coming. Stay calm." By the time Daniel's team arrived, the intruders had realized the advantage had shifted. Two black SUVs screeched to a halt outside. Masked men and women in tactical gear stormed the mansion, moving swiftly with precision. The intruders, realizing they had underestimated their opponents, attempted to escape through a rear exit. Maria watched, holding Eli tightly, as the chase unfolded like a scene from a film. Officers and security surrounded the estate with expert coordination. Within minutes, both intruders were apprehended. The silence returned, heavy and absolute, broken only by Eli's soft, shaky breaths. Maria knelt beside him, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "It's over," she whispered. "You're safe now." He clung to her hand, the tears finally spilling, unspoken fear dissolving in the relief of presence. "You stayed," he said softly. "Yes," Maria replied, her voice steady but trembling. "I stayed. And I always will." The following morning, the city awoke to news of the thwarted intrusion at the Carter estate. Reporters buzzed outside the gates, flashing cameras capturing the mansion that had been the stage of last night's drama. But Maria and Eli didn't care. They had survived, and the threat had been neutralized. Samuel Carter approached Maria privately, his expression a mixture of relief and awe. "Maria, I don't know how to thank you. Last night you kept him safe when I couldn't. You've proven what staying truly means." Maria shook her head. "No thanks, sir. I just did what anyone should. I stayed." Samuel nodded, but the gratitude in his eyes was unmistakable. "Then stay, Maria. Stay as long as Eli needs you. We'll handle the rest." That afternoon, Maria prepared another simple rice meal, this time infused with herbs and chicken, her hands moving with calm determination. Eli sat beside her, munching quietly, the trauma of the night still lingering but softened by the comfort of routine. "You're really brave, Maria," he said, cheeks full. "I don't feel brave," she admitted. "I just stay. Bravery comes later." He smiled faintly, a glimmer of the boy who had once been silent and withdrawn. "I like that," he said softly. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, unaware of the drama that had unfolded within one of its tallest estates. But within those walls a lesson had been learned, that staying, even in the face of danger, was a force stronger than fear, stronger than threats, stronger than any external power. By evening, Maria sat by the window, watching the skyline glitter with resilience. Eli was asleep upstairs, safe, breathing steadily. She knew the night's events would leave scars, but the bond between them had deepened beyond measure. Staying had carried them through, transforming fear into courage, threat into vigilance, and uncertainty into trust. And as she looked at the city below, a thought crystallized in her mind. The storm of secrets and betrayals could continue to rise, but as long as she stayed, they would face it together. Because staying wasn't just about kindness anymore. It was survival. It was courage. It was love. And Maria, for Eli, would never walk away. Morning light spilled into the Carter estate, the golden rays cutting through the lingering shadows of the previous night's chaos. Maria moved through the halls with quiet purpose, carrying a tray of rice meals, steamed vegetables, and fresh fruit. Each dish was simple, nourishing, yet full of care. Eli followed her closely, holding Mr. Floppy tightly in one hand, still processing the ordeal of being targeted and betrayed. "You're really good at making these," Eli said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Maria smiled, setting a bowl in front of him. "I learned from someone who taught me that food isn't just for the body. It's for courage, for comfort, for staying." Eli's eyes met hers, lingering on the unspoken promise in her tone. The night before had tested them both, revealing how fragile their lives could be. Yet it had also revealed how resilient they could become. For the first time in weeks, Eli felt a small flicker of safety and trust. Later that day, the estate's private gardens were alive with activity. Samuel Carter had arranged a discreet meeting with the estate's legal team, advisors, and security personnel. The discussion was tense, but Maria remained in the background, watching, listening, calculating. She didn't need formal authority. She needed presence, vigilance, and insight. Every detail mattered. The intruders were professionals, Samuel explained to the group, voice tight with controlled anger. They had inside information. Someone on the estate must have assisted them, intentionally or not. Security protocols are being reviewed, but we cannot afford another breach. Maria's mind raced. Lila's previous infiltration, the anonymous threats, and the carefully orchestrated attack now formed a pattern. Staying wasn't enough if she didn't anticipate the next move. But she also knew that fear could paralyze. Courage, even quiet courage, was their true weapon. That afternoon, Maria let Eli through the estate's library, a sanctuary where light filtered through tall windows and dust motes danced in sunbeams. The boy's steps were hesitant but steady. Maria encouraged him to sit at a small table by the window, a place where he could draw, read, or simply watch the city awaken. "You're growing stronger," Maria said, brushing hair from his forehead. "Not because nothing scares you, but because you've chosen to face fear with someone who stays." Eli's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "I think I understand now. Staying really matters." Maria nodded, her own chest tightening with a mix of pride and relief. The lessons she had hoped to teach him, that presence, courage, and care could transform even the darkest moments, were taking root. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the estate, Daniel appeared at the gates. He had uncovered another lead, one that could expose the source of the threats and prevent future danger. Maria and Daniel moved through the hallways with quiet efficiency, reviewing the intelligence and coordinating with security. Eli watched from the library, Mr. Floppy clutched tightly, sensing that adults were finally taking the reins, yet aware that staying wasn't just their duty. It was his too, in the small ways that mattered. Trust, listening, and presence. When Daniel explained that the investigation pointed to an external syndicate exploiting Eli's inheritance, Maria's heart hardened. She had suspected threats within the estate, but this was larger, more calculated. The stakes had risen, but she had grown alongside Eli. Patience, vigilance, and determination were now her allies. That evening, the Carter estate hosted a discreet gathering of allies, trusted friends, extended family members, and security consultants. Everyone was aware of the previous night's intrusion, but Maria remained the quiet center, observing interactions, ensuring Eli remained shielded from fear and speculation. "You've done well," Samuel whispered to her, his voice low and sincere. "Not just last night, but in every way since Eli returned. You stayed when most would have run. That's what saved him." Maria felt a flush of warmth, but she deflected the praise. "I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just stayed. Presence matters more than perfection." Samuel's eyes glistened. "It does. And now because of you we'll rebuild stronger, smarter, safer. You've changed more than Eli's life. You've changed ours." That night, Maria and Eli sat in the mansion's small observatory, gazing at the city skyline. The distant hum of traffic, the faint glow of windows, the whisper of wind against the glass. It all seemed quieter, calmer, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "I'm scared sometimes," Eli admitted, clutching Mr. Floppy. "But I think I can handle it now." Maria smiled, brushing her fingers over his hand. "Fear is natural. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting even when fear is there. Staying, being present, protecting those you care for. That's what makes us strong." Eli's eyes brightened. "Then I want to stay strong. With you." "And I'll stay too," Maria said firmly. "Always." The storm of the previous night, the betrayals, and the threats seemed to fade behind the warmth of their bond. The city below glittered with life, yet within the observatory, a quiet fortress of courage and trust had been built. The following days were dedicated to fortifying the estate and ensuring Eli's world was safe. Daniel coordinated with outside authorities, security protocols were tightened, and allies who had once doubted Maria's role now acknowledged her invaluable insight. Yet, the true transformation was not in walls or alarms, but in Eli himself. He spoke more freely, laughed more openly, and even began to plan small outings beyond the estate, always under Maria's watchful and protective guidance. Maria noticed that her own perspective had shifted too. Staying wasn't just about protecting someone. It was about teaching resilience, creating trust, and planting seeds of courage that could grow far beyond any threat. One afternoon, while preparing a simple rice and vegetable meal, Maria looked out the kitchen window and noticed the skyline glowing in the afternoon sun. Eli approached, holding a sketchbook filled with drawings of their time together. Safe spaces, observatory scenes, playful adventures, and symbols of courage. "I made this for you," he said, handing her the book. "So you remember that. Staying really matters." Maria turned the pages slowly, her chest tight with emotion. Every sketch, every line, every color reflected the journey they had endured together. Threats had loomed, danger had whispered in the night, but their presence and courage had transformed fear into resilience. "You've grown so much," she whispered. "And it's because we stayed. We stayed together." Eli smiled, a glimmer of mischief returning to his eyes. "Then let's keep staying. No matter what." Maria nodded, feeling the weight of the past weeks, and the power of staying settle within her. She knew the story was far from over, challenges would continue, threats might return. But for now the bond forged through shared courage, simple meals and unwavering presence had become unbreakable. The city beyond the estate continued its relentless pace, unaware of the lives quietly being rebuilt within one mansion. But in the Carter estate, a quiet revolution of trust, courage and staying had taken root. Every shared meal, every whispered reassurance, every act of presence had rippled outward, teaching a boy to reclaim his voice, a girl to embrace her strength, and an entire household to recognize that power was not measured in wealth or force, but in courage and loyalty. Maria looked at Eli as he drew the final sketch of the observatory, the two of them side by side. She realized then that staying wasn't an act of heroism, it was an act of love. And in love they had found their ultimate strength. Weeks had passed since the night of the intruders. The Carter estate, once a stage for fear and tension, had begun to hum with life again. Light filled every room as sunlight poured through wide windows, and the estate's gardens, once quiet and empty, were alive with movement, birds, rustling leaves, and the faint laughter of Eli. Maria moved through the halls carrying a tray of rice meals, this time garnished with colorful vegetables and fresh herbs. Each step she took felt lighter, more assured. She no longer walked with the urgency of fear. She walked with purpose born from experience, resilience, and the knowledge that staying truly mattered. Eli approached her, holding a small plant he had nurtured in the greenhouse. "For you," he said shyly, "to remind you that we grow when we stay." Maria smiled, taking the plant gently. "It's beautiful, just like you." He grinned, the mischief and joy of childhood slowly reclaiming his features after weeks of stress and silence. The boy who had once clung to shadows now walked in the light, his confidence nurtured by care, presence, and the quiet power of staying. Outside, the city of New York stretched in glittering splendor. The streets bustled, unaware that a profound transformation had taken place in one mansion, where trust, courage, and loyalty had redefined lives. Maria stepped onto the balcony, the plant in hand, and looked out at the skyline. She thought about the journey, the threats, the betrayals, the moments when fear had whispered to give up, and she realized that courage was always about choice. Choosing to stay, choosing to protect, choosing to love. Daniel appeared quietly behind her, observing the skyline. "The investigation is complete," he said. "No more threats. Eli is safe. And you've changed everything." Maria shook her head. "I didn't change everything. We stayed. That's what changed everything." Daniel smiled, understanding the quiet lesson. Staying wasn't dramatic. It wasn't about heroics or recognition. It was about presence, consistency, and courage. That evening, Samuel Carter invited Maria and Eli to a private dinner in the estate's grand hall. Candles flickered, soft music played, and for the first time since the intrusion, there was no tension. The family gathered, united not by wealth or obligation, but by gratitude, trust, and the bonds forged in adversity. "Maria," Samuel said, lifting his glass, "what you've done for Eli, for this household, for all of us cannot be measured. You've shown that true courage comes not from strength alone, but from staying when it matters most." Maria felt warmth rise in her chest, but she remained humble. "I only stayed. That's all anyone can do. Staying matters more than anything else." Eli, clutching Mr. Floppy, whispered softly, "She saved me by just being here." Samuel's eyes glistened. "And that is priceless." The next morning Maria guided Eli through the estate's gardens. Spring had arrived, and flowers bloomed in riotous color. She held his hand as they walked along winding paths lined with tall hedges, imagining worlds they could create together. "You know," Eli said, gazing at the vibrant blooms, "I used to think staying was just about safety, but now, I think it's about trust. About love." Maria nodded, feeling the profound truth in his words. "Yes, Staying teaches you that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, consistent, and invisible to those who aren't paying attention. But it's always there, growing just like these flowers. Eli looked up at her, eyes shining. Then I want to stay too. With you. With everyone who needs someone. Maria squeezed his hand. And you will. That's how we change the world. One person at a time, by staying. Weeks later, the estate opened a small community outreach program. Inspired by Maria's example of courage and presence, children from nearby neighborhoods were invited to play, learn, and grow in a space filled with safety, laughter, and trust. Eli, once silent and withdrawn, now guided newcomers through activities, sharing stories of resilience and courage. Maria taught cooking lessons, showing the children how simple meals could carry warmth, love, and reassurance. She explained that feeding someone wasn't just about filling a stomach. It was about showing care, presence, and commitment. The impact spread quickly. Parents observed changes in their children, small acts of courage and kindness blossoming across the community. The estate's wealth, once a symbol of separation, became a platform for connection, nurtured by the quiet power of staying. One afternoon, Maria sat with Eli beneath a large oak tree, the city skyline in the distance. He held a notebook filled with drawings, stories, and plans for future projects. Look, he said, pointing to a page. We can build more places like this. For kids who feel invisible. For kids who need someone to stay. Maria's eyes softened. We already are. Every act of staying grows into something larger. Courage spreads when it's shared. Eli looked at her with a mixture of awe and determination. Then we'll keep staying. Always. Maria nodded, feeling the weight and power of his words. She realized that staying was not only protection but a legacy. It was a ripple that could extend far beyond their own lives, transforming communities, hearts, and futures. The final evening of the story arrived with a golden sunset painting the estate in warm hues. Maria, Eli, Samuel, and Daniel gathered on the balcony, looking out over the city, reflecting on the journey they had survived. From fear, Maria said softly, we learned courage. From danger we learned trust. And from staying we learned love that doesn't fade. Eli hugged her tightly, Mr. Floppy tucked safely under his arm. We stayed, Maria. And look what we built. Below, the city continued, unaware of the quiet revolution of resilience and presence that had been forged within the estate. Yet within the mansion's walls a profound truth had taken root. The smallest acts of care, the commitment to stay, the courage to face fear. These could change lives, mend hearts, and create legacies stronger than fear, wealth, or time. Maria looked at Eli, then at Samuel and Daniel. This is just the beginning, she said. Staying will always be the start of something greater. As night fell, the lights of the estate glimmered like stars reflected on earth. The garden, the library, the observatory. Each space held memories of courage, trust, and love. Maria understood then that staying was more than a choice. It was a philosophy, a force, a declaration that no one would face darkness alone if someone chose to remain. Eli whispered, "Thank you for staying." Maria smiled, tears brimming. "I'll always stay. And so will you, in your way. That's how we make the world better. One act, one person, one moment at a time." The story ended not with fanfare or grandeur, but with quiet assurance. The threat was gone, the fear had been faced, and the bond between Maria and Eli had created a legacy far more enduring than any building or wealth. The city of New York stretched beyond the estate, indifferent yet alive, unaware that a small act of courage had grown into a movement of trust, resilience, and presence. But within the Carter estate, every shared meal, every whispered promise, every moment of staying had become immortal. And as Maria looked out at the skyline, she understood the most profound truth. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to stay. Because staying once chosen could echo far beyond the moment, transforming lives and building legacies stronger than stone, louder than storms, and brighter than any city light. The story concluded with the quiet resonance of that truth, the legacy of staying. A life lesson etched in the hearts of those who had dared to remain.